My own family abandoned me at an isolated desert gas stop 1,200 m from home, then vanished laughing. The searing Nevada desert wind whipped around me, thick with the scent of hot asphalt and desperation. It was a sun-bleached gas station, the kind that time forgot, its paint peeling like sunburned skin, windows too grimy to see inside. The air shimmered with 110-degree heat, and the only other living thing seemed to be a semi-truck driver slumped asleep in his cab. My family, they'd just driven off, laughing. My name is Julian, and I was 23 years old when my blood relatives decided it would be hilarious to see if I could survive being stranded. We were supposed to be heading to my cousin's wedding in Reno, a journey that had already felt like 3 days trapped in a psychological pressure cooker. There was my father, Arthur, who'd spent my entire life perfecting the art of making me feel like a worthless disappointment. My brother, Noah, who quickly figured out that siding with Arthur was far easier than developing a backbone. And then my mother, Diane, who'd mastered the silent art of witnessing every cruelty while pretending she understood nothing. This family bonding trip was Arthur's brainchild. He owned an appliance repair business back home, a small-town operation that clung to life because it was the only option in Arthur's willingness to undercut everyone else. Business was just good enough for him to drag us all to Nevada, which really meant 3 days of him and Noah taking turns tearing me down, while Diane stared blankly out the window. I'd been working for Arthur since I dropped out of high school at 17. He'd convinced me it was the smart move, telling me, why waste time on education when you can learn a real trade? Appliance repair, HVAC, whatever brought in money. He paid me a pittance, $9 an hour under the table, while charging customers $90 for my labor. I lived in their basement, paychecks barely covering the rent he started charging when I turned 18, $300 a month for a futon beside a constantly flooding water heater, always reeking of black mold and heating oil. The first 2 days of the trip were standard family dysfunction. Arthur nitpicking my driving. Noah making endless jokes about my single status while he was engaged to some woman he'd met in a bar 3 months prior. Diane would occasionally offer a weak defense that only made things worse, changing nothing. The joke about abandoning me had started from day one. Wonder if Julian could hitchhike home from here. Bet he'd cry if we left him at a rest stop. Each time, their cackles filled the car. Each time, I'd force a smile, knowing any real reaction would just fuel their cruelty. That morning, 6 hours into our drive, we were truly in the middle of nowhere, just highway, desert, and that air-shimmering heat. The Tahoe's AC was struggling, Arthur had refused to get it serviced. He pulled into this decrepit gas station, the kind that looked like a ghost from 1987. One cash-only pump, windows so grimy you couldn't see inside. A faded sign promised, gas food restroom. Pit stop, Arthur barked. 10 minutes. My back was screaming from being crammed into the third row, a 6'1" man in a space designed for groceries. I unfolded myself, joints popping, the brutal heat hitting me like a physical blow. I headed for the restroom, leaving my phone, which was at 12% and charging, and my wallet with its measly $43. What was there to buy here? My keys, though, were in my pocket, a lifelong habit from Arthur's tendency to throw away my belongings when they annoyed him. The restroom was an abomination, graffiti everywhere, a toilet straight out of a horror film, and a sink with scalding water only. 8 minutes, tops. I washed my hands with that industrial pink soap that strips skin, drying them on my jeans because the dispenser was empty. When I walked out, their Tahoe was gone. The parking spot was empty. I circled the building. Nothing. The semi-truck driver woke, stretched, and drove off. Still no Tahoe. A chilling realization dawned, they actually did it. All those threats, all those jokes, maybe we should just leave you somewhere and see if you can make it, bet you couldn't last a week on your own, they meant every single word. I stood there, in the scorching Nevada sun, wearing a faded high school band shirt, jeans, and work boots falling apart. No phone, no wallet. The old man behind the counter, the one running this desolate outpost, let me use his phone. I could have called them. I could have begged Arthur to come back. But a cold, quiet anger settled in my chest. Instead, I called information. Got the number for a shelter in Reno. Told the guy who answered, in a voice devoid of emotion, that I needed help. He asked if I was in danger. I said I'd been ditched, had no way to get anywhere. He told me to hang tight. They'd send someone. 2 hours later, I was in Reno. The shelter was a converted office building, smelling of industrial cleaner and quiet despair, but it had beds. And the director, David, a man who looked like he'd seen every possible permutation of human cruelty, said I could stay as long as I needed. That night, lying on a cot in a room with 7 other guys, a new kind of resolve solidified in me. I was never going back. Not to that basement, not to that job, not to those people. Week 1 was pure survival. The shelter had rules: up by 6 a.m., mandatory chores, job search non-negotiable. Lights out at 10 p.m. No exceptions. They'd literally flipped the breakers. The other guys were a mix of recently homeless, recently sober, and recently released. There was a former accountant, a man named Ethan who'd lost everything when his wife cleaned out their bank account, and Frank, who'd done 7 years for armed robbery. No one asked too many questions, which I appreciated. David, the coordinator, was a former Marine, built like he still did PT every morning. He had a way of looking at you that stripped away all pretense. He helped me get replacement documents, even fronted the $75 for my birth certificate. He said I could pay him back whenever. David also helped me get a prepaid flip phone. I kept my old number active for a week, just in case any legitimate calls came through. They didn't. Only family. On day 3, I found a fabrication shop called Ironclad Custom, about 2 miles from the shelter. I walked there in the 105-degree heat, bus fare being $2.50 I didn't have. It took 40 minutes, and I showed up drenched in sweat. The owner, Miguel, was a bear of a man, built like a refrigerator with a beard that could have housed a small family of birds. The shop was a metal building in an industrial part of town, surrounded by other places that dealt in things probably legal. They specialized in custom metalwork. I asked if they needed help. He asked what I could do. I told him appliance repair, tools, learned fast, not afraid of hard work. He looked at me for 30 seconds, taking in the sweat, the desperation. Then he said, "You ever weld?" "No, but I can learn." "You're hired. Minimum wage, cash daily until you prove you're not useless. Screw up my equipment, you're out. Steal, you're out. Show up messed up, you're out. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Can you start tomorrow?" Just like that. No applications, no references, no background check. Just a handshake and a chance. I later learned Miguel had been homeless once in the 80s. He knew what it looked like when someone was trying to claw their way out of a hole. The work was brutal. My hands cracked and bled from industrial soap. I'd come home smelling of grease and burned metal. The first day, I accidentally sprayed myself in the face with the high-pressure hose at the cleaning station. Miguel just walked by, saying, "You'll learn," and kept going. By week 2, he had me practicing welding on scrap metal after hours. The first time I struck an arc, the bright light burned through my helmet. The next day, I saw spots. "You've got steady hands," Miguel said one evening. "You're thinking too much. Let your body do it." It took months to get good, but Miguel was patient in a way I'd never experienced. He'd correct me without making me feel like an idiot. Revolutionary concept. I worked 6, sometimes 7 days a week. On day 9, my phone rang. Unknown number. I, an idiot, answered. Diane's voice, high and panicked. "Where were you? We looked everywhere. We came back to the gas station and you were gone. We were so worried. Were you kidnapped? Are you hurt?" I could hear Arthur in the background, tell him to stop being dramatic and get to Reno. Weddings in 2 days. And Noah, laughing. That distinct, chilling sound of someone finding genuine amusement in another's misery. Diane kept talking, machine gun questions. It was just a prank. We only drove down the road to scare you. We came back after 20 minutes and you'd vanished. Why didn't you wait? Why didn't you call? Why are you making this so difficult? A cold, hard clarity washed over me. You wanted to know if I could make it. I said, my voice flat. So stop calling and find out. I hung up. Blocked the number. When she called from a different number 10 minutes later, I blocked that too. They called 17 more times that day. I blocked every single one. The next day, I got a completely new number, giving it only to David and Miguel. The messages piled up in my old voicemail before I ditched it completely. I listened once, Arthur yelling I was childish, Diane crying about family, Noah saying I was overdramatic over a joke. Each one more desperate, then angry, then threatening. I deleted the account and moved on. Month 2, I moved out of the shelter. Found a room in a house with 4 other guys, all working odd jobs. $200 a week for a room the size of a closet, shared bathroom, kitchen privileges. It was a rough part of town, sirens every night. But it had a door that locked. I bought a $12 padlock at Home Depot and used it religiously. My room had a twin mattress on the floor, a Goodwill lamp, and a milk crate nightstand. The roommates were fine, mostly. One, Ethan, worked nights at a warehouse. He taught me about bus routes, where to get deals, neighborhoods to avoid, and pawn shops that gave fair value. Street knowledge you don't get from Google. Work was getting better. After 3 months, Miguel moved me to actual fabrication. He started teaching me TIG welding, which requires real skill, steady hands, and coordination. I practiced obsessively, staying late, watching YouTube videos. You're getting better, Miguel said one day, inspecting a practice weld. This is almost passable. Maybe in another year you'll be decent. From Miguel, that was basically a standing ovation. He bumped me to $15 an hour. After rent, food, bus fare, and phone, I had about $50 left. I saved 40 of it every week in a sock under my mattress. I didn't trust banks. I tracked Arthur online through burner Facebook accounts. The appliance business was doing fine. Noah had taken over most service calls. Arthur posted constantly about building a legacy. Diane shared Bible verses and sunsets. Neither mentioned having 2 sons anymore. Check their profiles, and you'd think they had 1 kid. All photos of me, wiped. Family vacations, Christmas mornings, birthdays, deleted or cropped. After 6 months, I bought a beater truck. $2,000 for a '97 Ranger, 190,000 miles, more rust than paint. But it ran. No more buses. Miguel taught me basic repairs. Tools are tools, he'd say. Metal is metal. Same principles, different application. You can fix anything if you understand how it works. I started community college classes at night, welding certification. 8 to 5 at work, then 6 to 9 at the technical school, home by 10, pass out, repeat. Weekends, I worked at Ironclad. The grind was insane. I lost weight, lived on gas station burritos and energy drinks, slept 5 hours a night. But I was building something. A skill set, a certification, proof that I wasn't the worthless person Arthur had spent 23 years telling me I was. 1 year in, I got my welding certification. Miguel gave me a raise to 18 an hour and made me lead fabricator. I was training other welders. Me, the guy who couldn't make rent a year ago, was teaching others how to weld. That's when I met Chloe. She came in asking about custom exhaust work for her motorcycle. Miguel was out, so I handled it. She spoke with a refreshing directness, no wasted words. I gave her a quote. She said, "Make it happen." The exhaust took 2 weeks. I welded every joint, ground it smooth, polished it until it looked factory. When she picked up her bike, she circled it twice, then looked at me and said, "This is perfect. You want to grab food?" I was covered in metal dust and smelled like burning metal. But I said yes. We went to a hole-in-the-wall Thai place. She was in nursing school, working night shifts to pay for it, and had zero patience for nonsense. We started hanging out. She'd stop by the shop, bring coffee. Miguel liked her immediately. Anyone who rides a bike and can bench press you is okay in my book. We were dating within a month, living together within 6. 3 years after being ditched in Nevada, I had built something resembling a real life. Chloe finished nursing school, got hired at a major hospital. I was making $22 an hour at Ironclad, doing side jobs. We moved into a decent 1-bedroom apartment. Miguel, who was in his 60s, started trusting me with the business side, quotes, materials, schedules. One day, he called me into his office and proposed selling me the business. A gradual buyout over 5 years. He'd stay on part-time. His price was fair, $120,000 over 5 years, structured payments based on income. I had about $8,000 in my sock money and $3,000 in checking, but Miguel said we'd work it out. He'd seen me work for 3 years. I said yes. We structured it, $2,000 a month plus a percentage of profits. The first year was brutal. Every penny went back into the business or to Miguel. Chloe and I lived on ramen and her nursing income. But the business grew. Word spread about our quality work. We added 2 more welders. By the second year, we were profitable enough for me to pay myself a salary. By year 3, I'd paid Miguel $40,000 of the $120,000. We were ahead of schedule. Arthur's appliance business failed around this time. I found out through my fake Facebook accounts. He tried competing with big box stores and was losing. Increasingly bitter rants, then closing sale announcements, then radio silence for 6 months. Then Diane's account started posting vague things about trials and faith. Arthur had health problems. They'd moved. Things were tight. Noah's social media was a graveyard of deleted posts and job changes. I saw him working at an auto parts store, then nothing. I felt nothing watching them spiral. Chloe knew the basics of my story. She never pushed for details, never suggested I reconnect. 5 years after being ditched, we got married. A small ceremony in a park. Miguel was my best man. Chloe's family, Marco and Elena, adopted me immediately. Marco taught me how to smoke brisket, Elena force-fed me Cuban food. By year 6, we bought a house. Nothing fancy, but it had a garage and a yard. The business was doing well enough that I'd paid Miguel off early, finished the buyout ahead of schedule. Chloe got pregnant that fall. We were excited, terrified. I upgraded the Beater Ranger to a newer truck. Things were stable. Our daughter, Clara, was born that winter. Healthy, loud, perfect. Then Nana Eleanor died. I found out through Facebook. Diane posted a massive tribute. Nana Eleanor had been the only decent person in that family, always slipping me cash when Arthur wasn't looking. I thought about going to the funeral, but it would mean walking into a room full of people who had decided I didn't exist. Chloe said she'd come if I wanted, but I could see she hoped I wouldn't. She had a newborn and didn't need that stress. I sent flowers instead, signed the card, from Julian. The response was immediate. Friend requests from accounts I didn't recognize. Messages from unknown numbers, "Is this really you? Where have you been?" I ignored all of it. Locked down my privacy settings. That night, I had a panic attack for the first time in years. The thought of them finding me, showing up at the shop. Chloe found me in the garage at 2 a.m., sitting on the concrete, gasping for breath. She didn't ask questions. She just sat with me until I could breathe again. Then she said, her voice calm and firm, "They can't touch what you've built unless you let them." 7 years after being ditched, life was solid. The shop was thriving, fully mine now. Chloe worked 3 12-hour shifts a week, allowing her to be home with Clara more. We'd moved into a bigger house. Clara had just turned 1, walking, babbling. I'd stopped checking Arthur's social media obsessively, maybe once every few months. Last I'd seen, they'd moved into a trailer park. Arthur was working at a hardware store, not owning one. Noah was bouncing between jobs. Diane posted prayer requests and GoFundMe links. They were slowly drowning while I was building something that would last. Then someone posted a photo of my work on a welding forum. A client had shared pictures of a custom gate we'd done. Scrollwork, hammered details. 3 weeks of meticulous labor. They posted it on a national metalwork forum, asking who'd made it. Someone tagged Ironclad Custom. The thread blew up, got shared. Someone must have screenshotted it and sent it to Diane on Facebook because 3 days later, Arthur walked into my shop. I was in the middle of welding a staircase railing when Marcus, one of the guys, came back and said there was a family asking for me. I pulled off my helmet, my heart a cold stone in my chest. In the office, Arthur looked like he'd aged 20 years. Hair completely gray, gut hanging over his belt. Diane had that drawn look of someone who'd had hard years. And Noah. Noah looked exactly like Arthur at 40. Same sneer. With them was a young woman, Brooke, Noah's wife. Nobody spoke immediately. The shop noise filled the silence. Arthur broke it first. "Julian," he said, his voice raspy. "You look good." I simply nodded, offering nothing. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Diane asked, her voice thin. I led them to the conference room, told Marcus we weren't to be disturbed. They sat. I remained standing. Arthur launched into his reconciliation speech. How they'd made mistakes. How family was important. How they'd been trying to find me for years. I let him talk, watching their faces. Arthur performing his routine. Diane crying on cue. Noah shifting uncomfortably. Brooke, Noah's wife, just looked utterly bewildered. When Arthur finally ran out of steam, I asked the only question that mattered: why now? Why not year 1, year 3, year 5? The silence was beautiful. Diane tried first. "We didn't know where you were. You changed your number." "I sent flowers to Nana Eleanor's funeral," I countered, my voice flat. "Had my name on them. So why now?" It took another minute before Arthur finally laid it out. He had medical bills, heart problems, no insurance, $15,000 in debt. Diane needed dental work, another $8,000. Their trailer was being foreclosed. Brooke was pregnant, and they were living in Arthur and Diane's trailer. They weren't there for reconciliation. They were there because they'd run out of options. "How much?" I asked, my voice calm. Arthur perked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "We were thinking maybe 25,000 would get us back on our feet." "No." Arthur's face went red. "You're going to let your own father lose everything after I raised you, gave you a job?" I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You paid me $9 an hour under the table and charged me rent to sleep in your basement." Noah stood up, aggressive. "You smug piece of, sit down." Marcus appeared in the doorway. 6'3", 240 pounds of solid muscle. He just stood there. Noah sat. I told them I'd think about it. Told them to come to my house for dinner that evening. Gave them the address. They left, thinking they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. I called Chloe immediately. Told her what happened. She asked if I wanted her to take Clara to her sisters. I said no. I wanted them there. I wanted Arthur to see exactly what I'd built. I spent the afternoon working through my plan. This wasn't going to be dramatic. This was going to be surgical. Chloe made dinner. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, rice. Clara, just learning to walk, toddled around the kitchen. They showed up at 6. Arthur kept calling Chloe, Patricia. Diane couldn't stop staring at Clara. Noah and Brooke made an effort at small talk, but Noah kept dropping hints about family helping family. Dinner was awkward. Arthur kept eyeing the house, mentally calculating its value. Diane would randomly tear up looking at Clara. Clara picked up on the weird energy and got fussy. Chloe took her to the living room. After dinner, Chloe took Clara upstairs for her bath and bedtime. I sat in my chair while they arranged themselves on the couch. Arthur started his pitch again, the health problems, the financial stress, how family helps family, how he'd always believed in me. I let him finish. Then I asked him if he remembered my 18th birthday. He looked confused. I reminded him, we'd been in the shop. I told him I wanted to go to trade school for welding. He'd laughed. Told me I'd never amount to anything more than a helper because I didn't have the brain or work ethic for skilled trades. Arthur squirmed. I don't remember saying that. I do, I said, my voice cutting. I remember every word. I asked Diane if she remembered the time Arthur threw my community college acceptance letter in the trash. She'd been standing right there, done nothing. Her face confirmed she remembered. I asked Noah if he remembered telling my ex-girlfriend I was probably gay when she came looking for me. Noah went pale. Brooke looked at him. The room was silent, save for Clara's faint fussing upstairs. Then I went to my office, came back with an envelope, and handed it to Arthur. He opened it. Inside was a check for $150. Arthur stared at it. What is this? That's what a bus ticket from Reno to our hometown costs. The exact amount it would have taken to get home from where you abandoned me. I'm giving you the same chance you gave me. Figure it out. Arthur exploded. He started yelling about disrespect and betrayal. Diane was crying. Noah was on his feet. I stayed seated, calm, waiting for them to burn out. You done? I asked. You're going to regret this. Noah said, his voice shaking with rage. I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. Get out of my house. They left. Arthur crumpled the check and threw it at my feet. Diane was sobbing. Noah was muttering threats. Brooke just looked embarrassed. I closed the door, locked it, set the alarm. I watched through the window as they stood in the driveway, arguing. Arthur gesturing wildly. Diane collapsed against the car. Noah pointing back at my house. They drove away, but I knew it wasn't over. 3 months later, my life went sideways. It started small. Negative reviews on our business page from fake accounts. 1-star ratings with vague complaints. I'd report them, they'd get taken down, new ones would appear. Then someone filed a false complaint with OSHA about safety violations. It took 2 weeks and a full inspection to clear, costing us time and a project deadline. A week later, someone called our biggest client and told them I'd been in prison for fraud. A complete fabrication, but the client pulled their contract while they investigated, costing us $30,000 in revenue. Chloe started getting hang-up calls at work. Hospital security had to get involved when someone showed up asking for her by name. I hired a lawyer. She started documenting everything, screenshots of fake reviews, call logs, platform reports showing accounts created from the same IP range. She said we had enough for criminal harassment charges. Then someone filed a false report with CPS, claiming neglect. That one sent Chloe into a spiral because they actually showed up at our house, asked to see Clara, interviewed us both. It was cleared in a day, but the damage was done. Chloe was terrified they'd come back. My lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to their last known address. It bounced back. They'd moved. I was done playing defense. I tracked them down through Facebook posts and public records. They were living in a motel in Sparks. The weekly rate kind, where people go when they've run out of options. The kind with doors that open to the parking lot and neighbors who mind their business because everyone's got something to hide. Diane had posted a prayer request about temporary housing, and someone had tagged the location. I showed up on a Saturday morning, driving my newer truck, parking right in front of their room. I knocked on their door at 9 a.m. Arthur answered. He looked worse than 3 months ago. Unshaved for days, wearing sweatpants and a stained shirt, hair greasy, eyes bloodshot. The room behind him was a disaster, fast food bags everywhere, clothes piled up. Brooke was sitting on one of the beds, looking miserable and heavily pregnant. Noah's voice came from the bathroom, yelling at someone on the phone. "What do you want?" Arthur asked, his voice flat. "To finish this." I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked past him into the room. The TV was on, a morning news show nobody was watching. Empty bottles on the nightstand. Noah emerged from the bathroom. He looked me up and down. I'd filled out since they'd last seen me. 7 years of welding and fabrication work had put real muscle on my frame. He saw it. Diane was sitting on the other bed, hair mostly gray, no makeup. She looked up at me, then did something I didn't expect. She stood up, walked over to Arthur, and slapped him across the face. The room went silent. "This is your fault," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "All of it. You couldn't leave him alone. And now look at us." Arthur's face went from shock to rage, but Diane didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, I saw her stand up to him. She turned to me. "I'm sorry. Not just for this, for everything. For never stopping him. For being too weak." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." Then she sat back down. It didn't change anything, but it made her human. "You've been harassing my family for 3 months, I said to Arthur, my voice a low, cold rumble. "Calling my wife's job, filing false reports, trying to destroy my business. That ends today." Arthur puffed up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "My lawyer has everything documented," I continued, cutting him off. "Screenshots, call logs, platform reports. We have enough for criminal harassment charges. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop all of it. Because if you don't, we file the paperwork, and you're explaining to a judge why you've been stalking my family. You can't prove anything." Noah yelled. "Already did. My lawyer's been building the case for 2 months. One more incident, and we file." Arthur's face went crimson. "You ungrateful little," "I'm grateful for exactly one thing," I said, my gaze unyielding. "You showed me what kind of man I never wanted to be." Diane started crying again. "We're your family," she wailed. "You were my family," I corrected, the words heavy with finality. Past tense. "You stopped being my family the second you drove away from that gas station." I pulled out an envelope, placed it on the dresser. "That's $2,000 cash. It's more than you gave me, and more than I should give you. Take it. Get out of Nevada. Go back home. Start over. Whatever. But if I see you, hear from you, or find out you've contacted anyone in my life again, we file everything, and you're done. No second chances, no warnings." Arthur stared at the envelope. "Why?" Diane asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why give us anything?" "Because I'm not you. I'm not going to leave you stranded with nothing. But I'm also not going to let you destroy what I've built. Noah moved toward me. I didn't flinch. Stared him down until he backed off. "We're done here," I said, my voice an iron command. "Take the money or don't. But if I ever hear from any of you again, the next conversation happens in court." I left. Walked to my truck, sat there for a minute, my hands shaking. The motel room door never opened. I drove home. Chloe was in the kitchen with Clara, making pancakes. Our Saturday morning routine. Clara was in her high chair, smearing banana everywhere. Chloe looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. "It's done," I said. And it was. The harassment stopped immediately. All the fake accounts went dark. No more calls. The reviews stopped. OSHA didn't hear from any mysterious complainants. CPS never came back. My lawyer told me later she'd gotten a call from a number in Nevada, asking what it would take to make this go away. She told them, complete silence. Leave the state. Never contact us again. The documentation we had was enough to press charges, and they knew it. Diane's slap had fractured their united front. She was done with Arthur's schemes. They took the money and left. 2 weeks later, I checked their Facebook accounts, all deleted. I never found out where they went. Never saw them again. Never heard from them again. Months passed. Clara started talking. Chloe got promoted. The shop landed a major casino contract. Life moved forward. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that motel room. About Arthur's face when he realized I'd actually showed up. About Diane slapping him. About the envelope on the dresser. But the truth is, I felt nothing. They'd become strangers. The real revenge wasn't the confrontation or the money. It was every morning I woke up in a house I owned. Every hug from my daughter, every dinner with my wife, every single ordinary day of a life I'd built from nothing. They'd wanted to see if I could make it on my own. Turns out, I could. And that was all the revenge I needed. If you found Julian's story compelling, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in his situation? And do you think Diane's apology changed anything? Share your perspective in the comments below.